Welcome to the High Bar, your weekly watering hole for light-hearted conversation with people who care about culture that matters. I am Warren Etheridge, your host and barkeep. I promise never to cut anyone off while encouraging all to think responsibly. Today, join me and my guest, Hanson Hosein, the filmmaker, journalist, academic, as we raise a toast to and the bar for conscious consumerism. We know that when America is in crisis, Americans must go shopping, but perhaps we should do so more consciously. Today we're going to talk about how we might approach that with a man who is a journalist, filmmaker, teacher, intellectual, curmudgeon, and maker of the film Independent America, The Two-Lane Search for Mom and Pop.
Yep.
And here he is, Hanson Hosein.
Hey,
Welcome,
Warren.
sir.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
You know, as part of the internet thing that we study in our program, we sort of believe in deserving sort of applause, and that's very old media to get applause. I haven't done anything to deserve that applause just yet.
That was just for me. It was
Okay.
my aura, my essence.
Okay, all right.
You will earn it throughout the program.
Okay, I'm going to do my best.
They are free to clap if you say something bright or funny enough.
Okay.
So you were on warning there. So let's talk about this thing, because really in the old days it seems that Americans would be told in times of crisis, sacrifice, do something important, but now we're told to shop. Is this really the way to go, and are we doing so with any sort of consciousness whatsoever?
Well, I mean, the sacrifice definitely during World War II we saw. That was indeed the America of old, and we probably know about this shop thing from Michael Moore's film, and how George Bush said we need to go back to consumerism to support the economy. I think actually we've turned away from that only out of necessity in the last couple of years, because we are so beaten down by this economic crisis that people have actually started saving all of a sudden. And so, although yes, right now the thing that we need most to actually inflate the economy is some rampant consumerism. It ain't happening. People are sort of saying, you know, I'm too scared about what's going on right now. So we may have actually found the antidote through deep economic crisis.
So depression
Yes.
is a solution to our retail problem.
Apparently the savings rate in the United States is up right now. I mean, unfortunately, that's not what the American government is trying to stimulate. They want us to start buying houses with these low interest rates, and they want us to get back out there, but there's a great deal of fear out there still. So I think we may have actually turned the corner in terms of over-the-top rampant consumerism. I think we still are a country of consumers, right? This is what we do. That's what we're trained to do.
So no more 3 hot tub family. You could be a 2 hot tub family and get by somehow.
Exactly. Maybe 2 bars of soap.
So if that's the case, and we're pulling back a little bit, it's not as if you can avoid consumerism altogether. You have to buy stuff because we don't make our own stuff. We don't grow our own food. You have to go shopping. Do you think that people are actually more conscious about how they're doing that?
I believe they're absolutely. In fact, the film that you referenced that we made a few years ago, Independent America, we set out to do that film to basically catalog the demise of what we call mom and pop, the independent retailers, because we thought they were on their last legs with the rise of Walmart and Costco and Starbucks. And what we found was these nascent pockets of conscious consumerism. People saying, you know what, I need to support my neighbor who's doing this business because it matters more for my economy. I don't trust people who are thousands of miles away from me because I saw what happened at 9/11. I've seen what's happened with Iraq. I don't trust large institutions anymore. So why do I want to give my money that way? Shopping itself has become a political act. And so that's where some of that consciousness goes into that.
But you took a very strict approach to this thing, in that you're taking back roads and you're going to small towns. You're going to Port Townsend and Durango and all these smaller places along the way. Is that true in big cities, though?
It historically has not been true in big cities. It works in those smaller towns that we featured because they're so small that the large retailers will ignore them, right? Because there's not enough critical mass to sustain their market. But we're seeing it more and more in big cities. I mean, New York and Chicago, obviously, with their strong union sort of support there, they try to keep out Walmarts. Seattle's kind of half and half. It's kind of hard to find a McDonald's in central Seattle. You can do it in the suburbs. But actually, the gimmick of the film of, you know, only going to secondary highways and only doing business with mom and pop, they're tied together because it was actually the interstate that pushed the suburbanization of America, that pushed us into our cars and pushed us into the strip mall, shopping mall, and then big box retail. So in a way, the antidote to that is the more walkable city, the smaller businesses, and the more sustainable economies. And we're actually being forced in that direction right now.
So the more we become a tight-knit community, the more we can fight off that big boxing if we want to.
If we want to,
If we
exactly.
want to. But the truth is, you do shop at the big boxes sometimes.
Yep.
You do.
I hate it, but I do.
How often?
I avoid it like the plague. I mean, the reason that we did this film, I was living in this small town in British
Hold on.
Columbia.
I avoid it like the plague, but I do go there.
Yeah,
if
but-
it's
well,
the plague, I don't
you know
go
what?
at all.
I believe in sort of the plague in small doses. How's that?
Yes, it worked out well.
Going inside a Home Depot just depresses the crap out of me.
Right.
I get overwhelmed. I don't know where to go. I don't know who to talk to, and so I love, for example, to go to smaller hardware stores. There, I can talk to the owner and say, "This is what I need," because I'm really a lousy handyman,
Right.
so they can help me. But you know, we'll shop on Amazon. We'll go to Costco occasionally. You know, Walmart from time to time. But my idea is not necessarily that we have to say these things are bad, you can never go there. It's more, there's all these great things in your community, in your neighborhoods. There's these people who actually sustain your baseball teams and who add so much more to the economy than these big stores that you need to support them. 10% of the time is good enough. It doesn't have to be 100%. I think I average about 50 or 60%.
50 or 60% on local.
Yeah, but it's easy for me, right? I'm fairly well educated. Middle class. Live in Seattle, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I was living in Las Vegas, much harder.
But even here in Seattle, it gets more and more difficult to do that. I mean, a lot of downtown is chain-based.
It is, but you know, where I live, I go to PCC for groceries, which is a cooperative. I mean, I buy my glasses from a local glasses store. I go to a local bookstore. There's a lot of. I think there's a real focus and a sense of consciousness in Seattle, at least. This is a very independently minded town on its good days, and so I think there's some really cool things that are going on where you can actually have those choices. We actually moved to Seattle 3 years ago. My wife's from Seattle because we felt that if we were going to choose a city, this town actually represents a lot of our values, and we felt really comfortable choosing Seattle for that reason.
Pro-Seattle.
I am very
no applause
pro-Seattle.
for that. Normally you say a city name and people applaud that. But
well, only half of them have.
I'm going to drink up. It's a tough audience today. But going to big box does have a lot of impact. The thing that amazes me is that it's not just about the cheapest price out there.
No. In fact, it's been said that Walmart, for example, only 500 of the products on any given day are actually really cheap or below market, and those are their loss leaders. And once you get in there, I've actually looked at some of the electronics and everything else. They aren't cheaper. And sometimes Walmart will actually go to the same manufacturer of a product and have them sort of cheapen the process itself just to get those prices down. So I much prefer to find alternative sources for those kind of things, because even if the price is better, you're not necessarily getting something that's going to last.
Right. Well, there's the quality of the materials, but to me the bigger question is that the people aren't paid much.
Yeah.
Who work there. That's what I have some issue with, actually.
And
it's the highest grossing company in the world.
It is, and the fact of the matter is that if any time a Walmart opens in any community and they start advertising for jobs, the line's around the corner, because this is what we've done to ourselves. All right, we've outsourced all of our manufacturing. We've decided that we're not going to pay a decent wage for what people do, and all of a sudden we're left with these shells of an economy, and so the only option you have is to put on an apron and go work in a Walmart for minimum wage or for very little benefits. And so, but yet a politician will say, hey, I brought a Walmart to our community, that brings in 600 jobs at this big thing. And it's a very tangible, quick fix for the economy, but they haven't really pointed out what you've lost along the way. That you put other businesses out of business, and they might have brought more to the economy.
Well, who's going to publicize that?
Exactly.
Walmart's not going to publicize that.
It takes a little bit too much work to think these things through. And that's why in our film, which is on Hulu.com, by the way, it's called Independent America, we deliberately did 2 pieces of animation to try to explain that impact and why it works that way and why you should know about it. And we think, and people have actually enjoyed that animation. I think it really helps understand what's going on.
And you also have the guy, Mr. Houston, down in Austin, who teaches us a little bit about the multiplier effect of where your dollars
Exactly.
go.
I mean, this is why we think it's such a big deal that a local independent retailer, it's been said, will add 2 to 3 times more economic impact. So if you put $1 in say, a local record store as opposed to spending $1 on Amazon or something like that, that dollar gets multiplied by 2 to 3 times more than what you would spend at a big box store, and so that means a lot for your economy. It just stays in your community. If you spend $1 at say well, we'll not say Costco because Costco's based here. Let's just say Walmart. You know, a lot of that money goes to national accountants and all the infrastructure that's thousands of miles away. Very little of it actually stays in the community except for what they pay in taxes and what they pay in wages. If you do that, sort of local small business, a lot more stays here, and it gets circulated through the economy a lot more.
So that's good.
That's good.
Keep the money local.
That's right. Which
Think
is why
globally, spend locally.
Yeah, and drink locally too. This is why we're drinking a Washington State wine, right?
It is
Yeah.
Chateau Saint Michel. Yeah. Thank you. That's not even a sponsor, but that was good.
Well,
Thank you.
good.
But let's talk about how you get the word out, because it seems like a little bit of a marketing problem. The big box stores can actually tell you, we've got lower prices, we've got this selection, we have all these things, and independent stores don't market themselves, can't market themselves, and can't fight the politics.
They can't, it's very hard to fight the politics. And there are a lot of tax laws out there passed by these communities that really it's one thing to say you should not shop at a big box store. It's another thing to actually create an uneven playing field, which is what happens in a lot of these communities. They pass these laws that really are very favorable to these companies. They get free roads, they get free police, and they get all kinds of things that small businesses just don't get. And so it's very hard for them to compete there. So when it comes to, yeah, I mean, there are some communities that have actually passed laws to keep big boxes out, and there are lawsuits around those things, right? That's discrimination, at least for some communities. For us, that's why we made the film.
Oh, sad corporations.
Yeah, corporations are people. Didn't you know that? According to the Supreme Court, corporations are people.
Right.
They're demented people, but they're still people. So yeah, for me, there's two ways of dealing with it. Either you can, you can do something crazy like pass a law and say no big boxes in your community, which doesn't go over well sometimes. Or you can just say, you know what, we need to tell this story better, which is what we did with the film. We think social media as well actually helps smaller businesses get word out about what they do a little bit more effectively. So there are some solutions. The problem is that usually it's a 1 or 2 person company, and they don't have time to be doing this.
Right.
And that's the challenge.
Because they don't have the money to do it.
Exactly.
Money they can't make enough money to.
It's a vicious circle.
So in the film, you talk to some people on the side of the freeway in North Carolina. One guy looks like he just swallowed Gary Coleman whole. It's pretty amazing.
Gary Coleman just passed away. Please.
I know that's how he could do it.
Okay.
Otherwise, that'd be gross.
Yeah, that would be.
So you got this big guy, and he's with his friend who's like a reject from Hee Haw or something, and they're talking, and they talk about how what's so wonderful about chain places is that it doesn't matter where you are, you're guaranteed the same thing time after time after time, which scares me. Mm-hmm. But your film depicts this wonderful thing. You're in Flagstaff, and there's the kooky guy with his ice cream, or the farmer's diner up in Vermont or something, and everything's fresh and wonderful. But surely, with this trip, you encountered some mom-and-pop experiences that sucked.
Yeah, I mean, and those guys were cool, by the way. I don't want to denigrate them. And I think, and for me, exactly, even like when you're traveling in Europe or something, sometimes you just say, enough with the snails, right? I just want a Big Mac, and so there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
But yeah, and so the idea is that you have to have a little bit more courage to seek out local experiences when you're traveling, and I think that creates a better trip. But of course, there are horror stories along the way. There's a reason why, Holiday Inn is sort of the more prevalent hotel when you go anywhere, because there are some cockroach-infested independent motels, and they're really cheap and they're terrible. Yes, so we stayed in some of those places.
Okay, so I want to hear some of those horror stories because they're not in the movie.
Well,
it looks like one idyllic, like you and your beautiful anchor woman wife hit the road, and you're traveling around in all these quaint places, and look, you're saving the world. And surely there was a time when she was pissed off at you.
Yeah, but you know what? There's actually a longer version of the film that's not online. That was the broadcast version, so we just made it sort of like that. The longer version is really about our experience traveling across the United States as a married couple. And there was this one place, we were in Toledo, Ohio, and we went out of our way to find an independent hotel. Really hard to find. So we found this place in front of the stadium where the Toledo Mud Hens play. And there was a tornado coming or something. So we just checked in this place. We went upstairs. The beds were unmade. The toilet was full with something. There was water in the bathtub. And so we shot all that. And actually, it's in the longer film. And we just sort of said, this is the kind of day that you'd want to go to a Holiday Inn immediately. It was just awful.
But you didn't.
We
did. Stay there?
Yeah, we did. But that's it, right? Why have we sort of blunted the edges so much in the way we live with this? We've suburbanized almost everything in our existence. And I know this economic crisis is a horrible thing that we're going through, but in many ways, we're learning how to live again. And we're learning what's important. I just came back from a few weeks in Detroit where I was shooting another film. And there, I mean, that economy has been so devastated by the loss of manufacturing jobs that, houses are being abandoned. People are growing their own food in city houses. And I think that desperation pushes us to actually become more sustainable and actually to not be as reliant on these organizations and companies, and that's huge. I think that's a really not a bad thing to be.